Okay guys, so today I'm just going to talk through a little bit more about, well, first of all I'm going to describe how I clean the glass on my enclosure. Then I'm going to talk a little bit more about these air comforts and soil quality and the hub device. And then I'm also going to talk about the Terra fans that I've installed today and how it all influences the climate in the terrarium. Okay, so how do I clean my glass enclosure? Well, first of all, let's open up the two front glass doors. It's looking a little bit dirty and a little bit grimy, so I need to give them a bit of a clean. After misting plants, you get watermarks and locust poop and whatnot on the glass, so it's just good to give it a little bit of a clean now and again. What do I use? Simple. I fill about half a bottle with warm water, and then I slice a lemon in half and use half the lemon juice, squeeze the lemon juice into the warm water, give it a good shake, and hey presto. Spray the lemon juice onto the glass, like so. Give it a minute or two to soak in. Lemon juice is good, it's got good cleaning stuff in it. And obviously they're cheap, and mixed with water, it makes a good cleaning solution. So, and then I just use paper towel to wipe off the residue. Now, because I'm holding the camera, it might not be as straightforward as usual, but so we literally just give it a wipe evenly, like a zigzag fashion, across the window. And we do that on both sides of the window. So you don't get watermarks. And it's as simple as that. So you get a much cleaner looking front window. So that's that job. It's just a very simple process, really. Lemon juice and warm water. Okay, so there's a little bit of watermarks on here. So the damp paper towel that I've used to clean the windows is just enough to get rid of the watermarks on this base here. So we've got a clear view of the of what's happening in the soil, really. Okay, so what are these now? What are these gadgets here? These are air comfort, thermometer and humidity sensors, which I purchased from a company, so the manufacturer is called IBBot. Now, IBBot is a specialist they specialize in equipment for like hydroponics, which is hydroponics is, how do I explain it? Hydroponics is kind of like if you imagine greenhouses and polytunnels and growing plants, it's kind of like the equipment used to help plants grow, if that makes any sense. So, and they can also be used in the home generally to measure temperature and humidity. They're perfect design for terrariums. So these ones are specifically designed for exotic pets. And they can also come in handy for horticulture. So if you're growing plants inside the home, so like houseplants, like I've got a snake plant there, or if you've got a little grow house, these gadgets are ideal to measure the temperature and humidity for that. And also they can be synced to an app on your PC or your mobile phone, Android. So then you can sync the data from these, and then if you have the hub, which I have purchased as part of the kit, the data can then be used to automatically produce graphs and charts to show the variations in temperature and humidity. And whilst I'm on that, I will show you exactly what I mean. So here we have the IBBot hub app on my desktop, and so I've created it to measure the temperature and humidity in the different zones. So we've got the arid zone, the drylands here, and then the woodland zone here. So now these have only been installed, so I installed them on the 31st of July. So obviously there may be some teething problems with, you know, the graphs may be a little bit skew if there, but we can see there's kind of like a pattern. So obviously this end here is today. So in the arid zone now, or when it was last measured at 4:30, temperature, the air temperature in the arid zone was 29.8 degrees. And on the woodland zone, it was, sorry, I've got the middle wrong. So the arid zone, 34.5 degrees, and then the woodland zone was 29.8 degrees. Now, this little dip here is probably due to the fans that I installed today, which I'll talk about shortly. So when the fans were turned on, the temperatures did dip slightly on both ends. And then I'm guessing that this rise, this sort of peak, is at the peak time of the day where it's hottest, which is where I'm located on the North Wales coast, and it's usually about 3 o'clock in the day at this time of year. So yeah, so it's a clever system really. And then I can produce, so I can see if I go to these little dots here. Oh, actually I've got it already up. So you can see here you can download these graphs. So over a time period it'll measure and gather the data, so you can sort of see how it looks over a time period. And then with the humidity, so this is the air humidity. So if I just go back to the so air humidity, so if we look at the woodland zone where it's more lush, the humidity there is 70+% generally. When we have a monsoon, so if I missed it, which in August it generally is a hot and humid month, even in the leopard gecko wild habitat. So when I come to mist it, obviously the humidity will rise to 80+%, and then during the day when it's hotter, it'll dip down to around 60 in the woodland zone. Then in the drylands, it obviously will be lower again, usually around 45, 50, 55. It's obviously that 70, 80, 70% in the arid zone was when we had the monsoon. When I say monsoon, when I misted the enclosure. So yeah, so it generally it helps to kind of look at the climate going on inside the terrarium. And here, this is the soil moisture and soil electrical conductivity information. So basically, the higher the soil conductivity, the higher the electrical conductivity of the soil means that the soil is more nutritious. And there's a little like sensor that you dip into the soil to measure that. So I just find it a very clever system. So my device list, I have 3 devices. So I have the 2 air comforts, one on the arid zone and one on the woodland zone, and a soil quality sensor to measure the soil quality and nutrients. And then there's the IBBot hub, which I can access through my desktop to access the graphs and sync all the data. So yeah, so it's a little bit more high tech. So I've still got my thermometer sensors, which I had originally, but I just thought that these would give more accurate readings of the air temperature and the air humidity of the terrarium. And speaking of which, there's 2 crickets there having a little bit of a fight, they were. So today I've installed these Terrafans. So hung them on the inside of the mesh because I didn't really see the point in putting them on the outside, because then it would just circulate air on the outside and wouldn't really, with the mesh lid, that would be a kind of like an obstruction really to air going inside. So I thought if I hang them on the inside with some wire, 99p wire I got from Home Bargains, then the air from the fan would go directly into the terrarium, and then some air would be drawn out as well. So now I was surprised. So these are Lucky Reptile Terrafans, and they're programmed to a timer, digital timer, which comes on at intervals, on and off at intervals 3 times a day, so morning, afternoon and evening, just to provide a bit of fluctuation in air. And they have, which I've noticed today as part of an experiment when I was testing them out, when they're on, it does reduce the temperature and humidity of the terrarium by a tad. Now when I say by a tad, I was testing them for a half an hour period, so just 1 second guys, I'll get the info here now. So these are the results that I had. So before I installed the fans, these were the temperature readings of the times that I tested. So at about 12:30 today, this afternoon, the arid zone was 33.7 degrees ambient. On the woodland side, it was 29.1. So that's the dryland zone. This is the woodland zone. Which relates to the temperatures in the wild as well. So I've got my climate plan here. Now this is just a certain area in the Potwar Plateau in Pakistan, which is generally very arid. I need to do a similar record for an area in the Bank district of Nepal, which this woodland zone here is designed to replicate. but I haven't got the data for the Bank District at the moment, but I know that it can be dry, it can also be humid, and it can be very wet and mountainous. And leopard geckos have been found there living in dead trees. So yeah, going back to my findings from the fan experiment. So I took temperature readings and humidity readings before I installed the fans, which shows here. Then after, so allowing about half an hour for the fans to settle. So by 1:30 I took a reading, and you can see that there's a slight difference in temperature on the warm side and the cool side, or the arid zone and the woodland zone. And also the humidity as well, there's a slight drop. On the woodland side, there's quite a significant drop. So without the fans, it was 69.5% humidity, and then with the fans on, it reduced it down to 61.8%. Now, the fans were only on for about half an hour. They're programmed to turn off by about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And then you can see by 2:30, nearly 3 o'clock, the temperatures go back to how they were roughly when before the fans were installed. So then it kind of creates that up and down kind of fluctuation, which is kind of what would be in the wild anyway. When we get a bit of wind, the wind kind of does affect climate, it affects humidity, it affects wind, affects temperature. So that's basically the reason why I've installed these fans, is just to enhance the climate a little bit more. Maybe if they were on for longer, the temperature would drop down a little bit more. So the test, when they were tested, they were only on for half an hour, and then the reading was taken after that half an hour. But let's just say they were on for an hour, then the reading may have been more again. That time will tell with that. That's another experiment. But generally, these fans, they're programmed to come on at 3 intervals in the daytime. So for approximately 2 hours each interval. And then obviously we will then see how it affects the overall climate in the terrarium. So that's pretty much what I intended to cover in this video. If we look at the biological side, so like the bug life, the plant life of each of the zones. So drylands, this section. Lush, green, wooded habitat on this section. This section mimics the Potwa Plateau region in Pakistan, which is a mountainous, arid area of Pakistan, yeah, where leopard geckos live. This area, as I described before, is designed to replicate the Bank District of Nepal, which is a mixture of dry and humid, mountainous and wooded regions, and they get monsoon seasons there. So temperatures in the daytime can be about 35 to 40, even 45. And then when we get the monsoon, humidity can be 80% plus. And we're in August now. Monsoons in the Bank District can typically last for about 2 or 3 months of the year. So August is a very kind of hot and humid month. But temperature, like the ambient temperature in there now is 30 degrees roughly. If we go to the spot temperatures, so if we look at spot temperatures of different areas, so the ground temperature 23.3. So there's a difference there between the air temperature and the ground temperature, and which which means that there's thermal gradient going on. Now, the plants also will help to regulate temperature and humidity. As I discussed in my previous video this week, that's another project I need to do, is to look into how the plants regulate humidity and temperature. They create little humidity pockets, little microclimates. So that can be achieved in smaller terrariums than this. But I suppose the beauty of having larger terrariums is that you can have more variety of plants in there, which then provides more of a variety of microclimates, which then provides more of a variety of temperature and humidity. So if we look at the spot temperature in the arid zone, that area there, 30 degrees. Ambient temperature, about 35, 37. Spot temperature in that shady area there, 30 degrees. Basking spot, we go to that one, 45 degrees. So there's a big difference there, but obviously that's directly under the sun. And the slate rock, it convects heat. So that will absorb heat, which will overall influence the ambient temperatures. So there we are, guys. That's a little bit of a lowdown of how to clean the glass using a simple, straightforward solution. An update on my temperature, humidity gadgets and the hub, and how you can synchronize the data. And the fans. So the fans are working. So yeah, all hunky-dory. A gadget that I do need, there's always something with this. What I need to look at now is to somehow measure the wavelengths of light, because it's all well and good providing sufficient heat. I'm going to close these windows because otherwise these crickets are going to come out. It's all well and good providing sufficient heat, but at the end of the day, heat comes from light, and reptiles absorb their energy from light. So what I don't know is what sort of wavelengths of energy is coming from this lighting equipment, and does it replicate their needs of the light wavelengths. And that is a more complex subject which I need to look into more. But like I said, the information provided through the Reptile Lighting group on Facebook, which is free to join, and there is a whole host of files on there to help gauge lighting requirements for leopard geckos. There's also another group specifically for leopard geckos which have lighting files, and that's Leopard Gecko Advancing Husbandry. So they have files on there to do with lighting. But the Reptile Lighting group is specific for lighting and heating, and it's run by scientists. It's free to join, and you can network with the members as well. So I'd recommend that group. There's also the Advancing Herpetological group as well on Facebook, which again is run by scientists who are active in the field of herpetology. So yeah, so those are three groups that I would recommend if you keep a leopard gecko and want to enhance their husbandry. So there's Leopard Gecko Advancing Husbandry, there's Reptile Lighting, and then there's Leopard Gecko Advancing Husbandry, then there's Advancing Herpetological Husbandry, and then there's Reptile Lighting. If you are bioactive or ecological, they're both pretty much the same meaning. well, they're not actually. Bioactive is, how can I explain it? It's how a living thing reacts. I did look it up. It's more to do with like compounds. So how compounds affect a biological living thing. Ecological is how living things interact with other living things and their environment. So I call this an eco-terrarium because it's ecological. Because the whole design is meant to be in such a way that each thing in there, whether it's physical, non-living, and living, all combined relate to each other. Now that kind of is a bit of a mouthful, but that's basically the purpose of the design. It's ecological. It's ecology. It's an ecosystem. Everything in there flows into another. So it creates a cycle, a system. So this, as for the cleaning, going back to the cleaning, I mean, I only literally have to do that job that I showed earlier in the video, was cleaning the glass, maybe a little bit of dusting on top. But I don't do any spot checks. The ecological system takes care of that for me. Plus, it would be difficult to go in there and try and find where he's pooing. I mean, I know from being his owner that he does poo, and always has done since he was a baby. Even when he was in quarantine, he poos in the cool side, which is this side, and his poo will be guaranteed in that corner over there somewhere in his tree den, or he's dug a little burrow. There's darkling beetles, crickets, cockroaches and stuff in there that will break it down and then absorb it back through the soil. But yeah, generally this is a self-maintaining, self-regulating ecosystem, guys. Okay, so I think that's enough info for today. But that's a general update on the terrarium. Okay, over and out, guys. Thanks for watching.